Song of Ice and Fire has an audiobook problem, and it is an issue the publishers are going to have to address at some point soon. Audiobooks over the last few years, thanks to sites like Audible, who are not sponsoring this video by the way, have become a much more mainstream form of media than it even was 10 years ago. And I believe part of the reason for this is the time and money publishers have committed to making the product the best they can be and provide a more engaging form of entertainment. When I was a kid, I could never really engage with traditional audiobooks, as back then in the early 90s, most were just monotone voices reading the text. Even now, every now and then, you'll come across some that were more engaging, particularly some of the old Star Wars Legends stuff on tape, but that was not the normal. But my attitude towards audiobooks began to shift about 10 years ago now, when I delved into the expanded Doctor Who universe with the Big Finish audio dramas. They clicked for me, as while they were audio-based, there was a high level of production behind them. Licensed music and good Foley effects really made them feel different and stand out. Then, in 2015, I signed up to Audible, downloaded some new Star Wars audiobooks, specifically the prequel to Rogue One, Catalyst, the Rogue One novelization, and a Kenobi novel about his first few weeks on Tatooine, and they really clicked with me. The performance from the narrator was great, but what was really different was how they'd implemented the use of music and Foley, so they didn't just feel like audiobooks, rather audio dramas of the kind Big Finish produced with Doctor Who. This opened up a whole new world of entertainment for me, and audiobooks are something I listen to daily when I'm working on videos like this, and when I go to sleep. I've maybe listened to the Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks 3 or 4 times now. But this is where the Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks come into the equation. First and foremost, they are read by Lloyd, and for the most part, he does a good job narrating the book and bringing George R. R. Martin's world to life. But it's clear there was a severe lack of direction when he was recording that only gets worse as the books progress. And that is where the Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks really drop the ball in a huge way, as the production as a whole lets some frankly avoidable mistakes take you out of the story, which is the last thing you want from an audiobook. Now, from what I can tell, the Game of Thrones and A Clash of Kings audiobooks came out in around 2003, with A Storm of Swords following a year later. A version of A Feast for Crows with a different narrator was released in 2005, with a Roy Dotrice version, the only one now currently available, coming out in 2011, with A Dance with Dragons having its audiobook come out a few weeks after. Now, this was before the big audiobook revolution of the last 10 years, and while of course they would have made a profit for the publisher, not the kind of large profits you see audiobooks making today, meaning the scope, budget and care in these projects were to a much lower standard. Now, before we continue, Roy Dotrice's performance is great. The characters have different voices, and for me his cadence just clicks, but that's a very subjective matter. But there are huge problems, namely the accents he uses for characters often changed from chapter to chapter. One chapter, Tyrion speaks with a slight Welsh accent, and the next, a Yorkshire accent, then back to Welsh the chapter after. This extends to several errors in how Dotrice pronounces names and places, given the way he does it often changes within the same chapter. I mean, the way Melisandre is pronounced is so vastly different from what George R. R. Martin intended, it can really pull you out of the story every time she's mentioned. And this happens with a few characters too, big and small. I see a lot of people criticising Dotrice personally for this, which is not really fair, because it really comes down to the laziness of the publishers and producers of these audiobooks for allowing this kind of thing to even happen. The Storm of Swords audiobook is nearly 50 hours long. It would take days to record it with multiple takes for each chapter, and with a story on the scale of A Song of Ice and Fire, you can understand how Dotrice would have had a hard time keeping track of his performance. But it's clear that the production company had no continuity person helping Dotrice keep track of what he was doing, giving him any direction on his past performance, or helping out with the frankly complicated names and places in the world. I kind of feel the publishers just didn't really care, and that there wasn't really enough money in it to do it well or do it right. To be fair, George R. R. Martin has credited the audiobooks with having consulted with him on most of the harder names and getting them right, but noted that they went and got all the easy ones wrong as well. And well, That is a shame, as Latrice's performance deserves better than the publishers gave him. Having watched quite a lot of his film and TV work, he is a good actor, and sadly, often gets saddled with the blame of the errors in these audiobooks. Sadly, Latrice died aged 94 in 2017, which means should The Winds of Winter come out, it would have a new narrator, which is a big issue all in itself, as finding the right person will be key. And given this, I hope they look to some of the better audiobooks out there from the last decade, as they will be releasing The Winds of Winter into a new age of audiobooks, where people have a new level of expected quality, and where there is much more profit to be made by releasing a quality product. Publishers should look to some of the other great audiobooks as a marker to aim for. The audiobooks for The World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood are decent, but Dunk and Egg really do stand out as something different. They are read by Harry Lloyd, who played Viserys Targaryen in the TV show, and in general are of a much more higher quality than the main books, and you can tell much more care and love was put into them. Lloyd is a fantastic narrator, and gives each character in those stories so much personality, with each being distinctive. Would Harry Lloyd be the solution to The Winds of Winter? I'm not sure, but it's definitely a solid option. There are 3 audiobooks I think they should look at as inspiration of where to take The Winds of Winter. The Expanse audiobooks are among the best I've listened to. Not only is Jefferson Mays a fantastic narrator, he manages to bring each character to life in their own unique way. The Expanse, like A Song of Ice and Fire, is a very large-scale story, especially into the later books, with many different point of view characters and supporting characters. Mays is able to give each their own unique voice and personality. No matter if they are male or female, you can get completely immersed to the point you forget it is all voice work of a single narrator. They really feel like listening to a radio play. It shows it's possible to make such an expansive story work in an audiobook format without making such fundamental errors as A Song of Ice and Fire did, because the production team cared about the product they were putting out and took time to do it right. The Harry Potter audiobooks, as read by Stephen Fry, are another really good example of a well-produced audiobook. Fry, of course, does great voice work with the characters, and he really gets across the humour and tone of the books, but where he really excels is simply reading the prose, narrating the story. His voice just fits so well. Going in, I was worried the fact it was Stephen Fry would distract me from the story, but it never really became an issue. But the best audiobook, by far, I've ever listened to is actually a fan-made one, and proves even with no budget, even someone in their own time can create an immersive and compelling audiobook. Now, I can't post any parts to it to show you guys, as the Tolkien estate and Warner Brothers take down the audiobook whenever it's posted to YouTube for rightful copyright infringement. But this fan-made audiobook of The Lord of the Rings, narrated by Phil DeGrache, for me is the pinnacle of what an audiobook can be, with time and care, and the love of a fan being put into it. The narration itself is fantastic, with each character standing out. Its use of the soundtrack from the movies really adds to the building of the atmosphere, and I have never seen an audiobook use Foley sound so well. Even simple little things such as echoing voices in caves, or the sounds of leaves underfoot, or a stream in the distance. It's a remarkable piece of fan work, and I wish I knew more about who made it and how they made it. I've left the link in the pinned comments to this project, as it's by far the best audiobook I've ever heard. And while I'm not saying sit down and listen to the whole thing, just check it out and see how good of a job they did. I would choose this fan project over any of the official Lord of the Rings audiobooks, and audiobook publishers can take note from what this fan-made project has done. And therein lies the issue with the Winds of Winter audiobook. Listeners are starting to expect more from them, and production has improved since A Dance with Dragons. Therefore, the publishers have some big questions to answer when it comes to A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, I don't expect them, or really want them, to go full Foley sound with the TV show's score, as I don't really think it fits with the A Song of Ice and Fire series and the world. But the kind of approach the Expanse took with their audiobook is a must in terms of the quality they should be aiming for. They need to find a narrator who can handle the diverse number of characters A Song of Ice and Fire has, but they also have to make sure the project is in the hands of a team who genuinely cares about the end product, to avoid the pitfalls that sadly came with Detroit's audiobooks. What's your take on the A Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks? Do the issues with them bother you? And who would you like to narrate The Winds of Winter?